I'm Pigeon. I'm known, Pigeon is my street art name, so I'm a street artist, among many other things. And I'm excited to be here today with you guys. And I cut my own hair, so somebody just, my friend told me this morning that I missed the spot. So we can get the laughing out of the way for now. I see you all got name tags. That's good, that's gonna help me. And one of the ways of introducing ourselves to one another, there's many ways of doing that. I think right now I live in Portland, and I have friends who are artists from Gabon, from Congo, from Iraq, and sometimes we don't have the language barriers there. But one way that we can introduce ourselves to each other is through our art, through our music, and that's always, that's always the quickest way. One thing I want to do today too is start a little bit with my personal story and how I got to become Pigeon and make street art. Where I grew up looked like this. It wasn't very romantic. It looked like this during the day, and often at night it looked like that. Right? I often say, when I talk to people in Maine, and people have these ideas, so they'll say, "Oh, you're from France, and all that, it's fancy stuff and all that." And I'll talk to people in Maine, and I'll be there's less to do where I grew up than there is in Madawaska probably. They try to open a movie theater about 15 minutes from where I live. Within 2 days, some kid didn't want to pay the ticket. He got kicked out, so his big brother's gang came and burned the place down. So we had no movie theater, right? So where I live, nobody really felt like they belonged. Like nobody, if you had an accent in French, from where I grew up, you couldn't get a job. If you were from where I grew up and you tried to get out of there, you wouldn't tell anybody where you're from. I think one thing that impressed me when I came to the U.S. was that everybody was like, "I'm American," and they had like American flags in their ear. I'm like, "I know we're in America. Why are you telling me we're here?" And they have like country music, and it's like, and it might sound cheesy to some of you, but to me, actually, I was pretty impressed. I was like, "Wow, these people are like proud of where they live." I wasn't familiar with that. Growing up, I wasn't good. I was really bad in school, actually. There was a couple things I was pretty good at, and I was good at art, I was good at music, and I was good at goofing off. That's not the one I was a kid. That was 2 weeks ago. On the job site, I'm also a carpenter by trade, so I was trying to entertain the crew. When I was 18, so when I was growing up, my dad lived in Maine. He lived in Ellsworth. Well, like 3 hours north of here, I think. I just drove 20 minutes south, so yeah, probably. All right, and I was growing up in France, so you guys probably don't need that geography thing. I do this presentation for a lot of age groups, so it gives them a sense of the distance. I didn't know my dad. I came here when I was 18, so to get to know him. So I went from the inner city that you saw to like the doors of Acadia National Park, and I was like, hunting and all that stuff. It was a big culture shock. It was very exciting, but it was also, that was me and my dad, and there was also a lot of limitations because since he was my father, I wanted to say that I belonged here now, and that in spite of having been separated from him for so long, that I had a connection to this place. So now we're living in the southern part of Maine, and this was 18 years ago, 3 hours north, and things were a bit different. So I was probably the most exotic thing anybody saw up there, or a lot of people had seen. So it was sometimes hard to find work for me based on my accent. It was hard to make friends. I didn't really understand the culture, so I didn't really understand even when somebody wanted to be my friend. I thought they were just being not nice people. And then now I have my son here in Maine, so I've always been here for family reasons. But when I came to Maine after growing up in a place where I didn't really feel like nobody really belonged, and then my experience in having a hard time belonging or making headway, whether it was for work or socially. About 5 years ago, I was walking up this hill in Bangor. So who's been to Bangor? All right. I like to call it the Venice of the North. It has canals, and it's kind of a joke because there's nothing going on there. So, so one thing that, who in this room has lived in another country before? Okay. So you can tell me if I'm right or wrong about this, but one thing that struck me when I came to the US is that people spend very little time in the streets. In fact, I know in Biddeford, I do some work here sometimes, this street don't even have sidewalks. And so I was living in Bangor, I think it's 35,000 inhabitants, and it's a beautiful night. The moon was out, it was warm, and I was the only one walking the street. Way down below there, I saw a guy in a wheelchair that was like went through, and that was it. And so one thing I think that is different in the U.S. from a lot of other countries is that people don't really hang out in the street. The street is to get from point A to point B if you lost your license and don't have a car, right? Whereas I know in France, or I spent time in Cameroon too, or in West Africa, where I have some family, and in other countries, people spend a lot of time, like it's a destination. You go after work, you go in the street, you go play with friends, or you go meet people, you know. It's like Facebook, but in real life, you know. So I felt so lonely, and I was walking up this street, and all I saw in the windows was this blue light, you know, when people are watching television. Like that's all I saw was just, you know, people are at home watching, I don't know, episodes, I don't know what, of The Living Dead, and here I am on the street on my own. And I stopped in my tracks, and I just thought, that's enough. I need to change this. I spent all my life living in a place where I didn't belong, and I just want to change that. So, starting with the street, I thought, well, what can I do? Well, I'm good at, I can make art, I can goof off, right? So, I'll work on some drawings, and I'll go put them on the street. So I started, I don't know, I was like, what do I see here in the street? There's seagulls. Nobody cares about the seagulls. Nobody watches the seagulls, so I'll draw some big seagulls and put them on walls. Planes. This was fun because I had to climb on that roof. And it was exciting. I was still on my own, but it was exciting because I'd go out at night and have adventures on my own. I started covering up, boarded up houses. And there at the time I was spending time in Harlem as well, in New York, so this was in Harlem. I tried to do things that nobody was doing. So I went in the canals, we broke through the ice in the winter, and I went and wheat pasted. So I'll tell you more about what that means. Wheat pasted on the side of the canals. The police in Bangor were like, how did this guy get there? So this is, okay, so talking about wheat paste. This is wheat paste. It looks disgusting. Basically, it's a glue that I make at home. That's what people used to use for wallpaper or posters in the early 1900s. And it's just flour and water, right? And that's what I stick my images with. So this is typically what I have on the night when I go out and put some stuff on the street. I have my bag, I have my little bucket, concealed, you know, in case somebody stopped. There I have whatever pigeons I was going to put that day. And the wheat paste, one thing that's different with the wheat paste is that it comes off on its own. So I put this for the city workers because they were spending so much time in Bangor scraping my posters off that I kind of felt bad for them. And it comes off with the weather. I feel like, because when I was a kid I did some graffiti and stuff, I chose, one of the reasons why I chose this is because I can make a drawing, I can copy it, and I can spend time at home and make a really good quality drawing, and then posted on the wall. It's not, there is, and we could talk more about that later too, but there are, most cities have laws that tell you can't just put posters anywhere you want. But it's very different, I think, because it causes no permanent damage to the building. It's not really vandalism, and therefore, for me, the thing I care most about is not being vandalism. It's just that it means that I can talk to people. It means that I can be public, and I can go out and I can be here in this school today. It means I can go to city council meetings, I can go talk to people in city hall. It means I can even talk to the police. And we had a lot of exchange in Bangor. So there's, you guys are too young to know Public Enemy probably. But this is my Flavor Flav Pigeon. I did a bunch. So one thing that, so there I was in Bangor, I was doing this, I was having fun, but it was still pretty lonely. And I realized that a lot of people were talking about what was going on. At some point there were 3 Facebook pages that were claiming to be Pigeon. How did the word pigeon come about? There was an article written in the Bangor Daily News, and they didn't know who I was, and so I put a lot of what I put was pigeon, so there was who is the pigeon and what is it doing in Bangor? So I decided, all right, I'll go with that. And then people would, and when I created my own Facebook page, people would go on, and usually I'd go out at night, I'd put like 10 or 12 of those, and I was proud, so I wanted to put them outside there. And then people would tell me, no, please don't do that. Wait till we find them, just tell us how many you put, and whoever is the first to upload phone pics of the pigeons, or whatever we put, won, right? So I thought about that, I was like, that's pretty cool, because that's actually what's happening is what I wanted to happen, which is people were going in the street together and playing a game. And so for those people, I dedicated the especially hard to find Where's Waldo Pigeon. And then some people started making their own wheat-based designs. So this guy was Squirrel, and he did a bunch of those, and followed me around sort of, because every time I put one, he put one. So then I started also being more public about what I was doing. I got to do talks about this. I got to meet people who wanted, okay, so backtracking a little bit, this was like what was happening before I really knew anybody in Bangor. This was in the paper. I guess it's a thing, happy ads. And so at that point, I started, once people knew who I was able to like do more public stuff. And this was a mural I did on the side of a building. And an organization gave me a studio where I could work in. This was on a day after I cleaned for 2 hours. It's usually even more messy than that. I had parties in my studio. And of course, when you can have cupcakes made with your logo on it, you do that. And then I started thinking, what's going on here? Maybe I'm not the only one who wants more of his or her environment. I'm not the only one who wants more of their city and wants more community, because people are really responding to this. It got to a point where, if you know Bangor, there's a river, and then there's Brewer, right? It's sort of the same city, but it's like Portland and South Portland, right? And if you were from Brewer, people would tell you, oh yeah, we're talking about Pigeon right now, right? You don't know anything about it, you're from over there. And so I was like, well, people are actually having some kind of pride about this, like Pigeon is from our town. And so I thought about this design, which was a t-shirt design that had the pigeon with I Heart Bangor. The first time I wore mine, I went to Bal Harbour for the day, and this Russian girl behind the counter said, what is BGR? And I said, it's for Bangor. And she looks at me and she's like, so it's ironic? Like, she couldn't believe, that somebody could love Bangor. And that's exactly why I did this. So people were pretty psyched to have like something they could wear and that said that they were from Bangor and that they were proud of it. Bangor has a lot of problems. There's not a lot of jobs. There's a drug epidemic that a couple of them actually in the only 2.5 years that I lived there, that hit the Bangor pretty hard. And so it was, for me, it was something that, how could I create local pride in a place that I wasn't still even sure I belonged in yet. It was good exercise. And then also I did some collaborative work. So this was did anybody here know what an exquisite corpse is? You know what it is? What is it?
Oh, no, I thought you were talking about the book, sorry.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know there was a book called it.
Yeah, it's a book by Poppy Sebright.
Oh, okay. Thanks I learned something already today. So typically, exquisite corpse is something where you draw, like I fold this paper in 4. And so I'll draw a head. My head, right? And I pass it on to somebody else, right? And they don't see what I did. And I fold it. And then the other person draws like the body, right? And then 4 people, or we just take turns. And then you unfold it, and it just looks crazy. You don't know what the other person's doing. So this is kind of what we did, where I had 85 artists, kids, and people of the community who did parts of these drawings. So I would put the lines here, and then they had to like make them draw parts for them, and then we all put them together. And we went around there's a lot of houses that were boarded up in Bangor, so a lot of houses that were abandoned, or this was one that had a really bad fire, because the people that were in it didn't have the money to get oil, so heat for the winter, so they started using their stove, and we caused the fire. And so my goal is just to bring life to those houses, because you live in neighborhoods and it really feels like your neighborhood is being neglected, being abandoned. So we're doing that. So we did a bunch of those. And so that was like a big collaborative work that really brought people together. And got me in a little bit of trouble, but not much. And then, so talking about trouble, at the time there was a lot of people doing graffiti in Bangor, and so the police department, whenever I do something, and they would contact me and be like, listen, we're going to write you a ticket for this, but if you tell us who does the graffiti, then we'll scratch the book. And so the people doing the graffiti, they were mostly high schoolers, and they would contact me. But I would tell the cops, no, I don't want to, I'm not going to give names, but I will come over and meet with you for an hour or two, and we can talk about how to make things better in Bangor for the youth. So one of the things that we came up with was doing murals, where when we do a community mural, we'd invite members of the police department to come along and add their personal touch. So as I was moving along in that direction, and I felt more and more included, when you're able to, like I said, sit down with somebody in the police department, when you're able to go to City Hall and people take you seriously, it makes you feel included and valued. But I always kept thinking about, okay, so who's not feeling that? Who is not feeling included? This, for instance, was a piece I did for my friend Gino. Gino is from Puerto Rico. Gino doesn't really read or write, but he's an amazing poet. So mostly he writes poems. Well, he doesn't write. He makes up poems and he stores them in his head. And then he goes to parties or open mics and he recites his poems. He slept on that bench for about the major part of about 2 years before finally giving up and going back to Puerto Rico. So I collaborated with him, where I wrote down the poem he had written about his experience of being there after he lost his family, and a portrait of him. I put a wheel of fortune. The wheel of fortune is like a medieval symbol that symbolizes like when, sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down, and the how, these things are kind of random. Yeah, I use his poster, his portrait for my Maine courses now. This I got in trouble for. This was on the wall of the Penobscot County Jail. It was done in black chalk, which can easily be removed. But the thing I didn't take into account was it was very, very cold that day. It was minus, no, it was close to 0. I still think it's something. And so after the police told me to come and take it down, I started trying to, I thought, so this was the thing about when Nelson Mandela passed away, and it was a quote about poverty, and I thought, and so the issue I had, this is some of the issues I faced, is that, so when the police came and asked me to take it down, they gave me a ticket. It was going to be like $100 or something, and it said, if you take it down, we'll rip it up. And my problem was that I knew that if I did that, if I took it down, people were going to say, well, if the guy really meant it, he would have just like left it there and paid the $100. At the same time, I was doing a mural about poverty, so it's kind of hard to justify for me to give them $100 just so I can have the freedom to be an artist when I could give the $100 to a soup kitchen or something. So I decided, okay, we will take it down. But then when I started putting water on the wall, it just froze. So it put like this protective coat on the thing, and it just, so it was a mess. When I came to Portland, I kept thinking, when I was talking about the bench with my friend Gino, I kept thinking about, I was thinking more on a statewide level. And I was starting to think, like, who on a state level gets told that they don't belong here in Maine? So this was outside the mosque in Portland. And I think the idea that somebody was touching something that's so sacred to somebody and so personal was something that really made me think hard about how we were failing as a state. So I did a series of these portraits in charcoal. And then I went on Congress Street in Portland on Friday night and put up this poster. And I made sure, one thing I do when I do my artwork is I make sure I try to see if the local press is interested, because I really want to get a conversation going on with as many people as possible. And with my street art, because it's street art, because it's weed pasting, you never know how long it's going to be up. So this one I had to do it twice because it got taken down and I put it back up. And then we got to do those murals in different areas in different cities in Maine. This was in Farmington. Farmington I knew nothing about. You guys know Farmington?
Yeah.
Okay. And mostly I knew it's a college town, right? So I'm thinking it's like hippy dippy. I got my own prejudice. So I go there and actually there's some very conservative elements there, and there's a whole, like, people who are not part of the university, they don't like the university. So when I was doing this, it was really cold, so I went inside this coffee shop, the coffee shop with the folks who let us use their wall, and I got a cup of coffee, and behind me was this little old lady, and she said, "You're the one putting those posters up on the wall there." Right. So I was like, "Yeah." And this was the first time that I'd been invited to do something legally, and that I was being paid. So I was working as an artist. It was somebody from the University of Maine, Farmington, who set all that up for me. So when she, and then she says, "Yeah, I bet this." So she said, "I bet it's the University of Maine who asked you to come do that." And so I was proud. So I was like, "Yeah, I got a paying gig." So yeah, they did. And she said, "I knew it." "What do you mean?" "They do nothing but bring people from away." I was like, oh, really? Because the only thing I know about the university is an article I read that says it attracts a lot of people from rural Maine, so like small towns. And she's like, yep, kids from Alaska, from Rumford, even from Augusta. They come here and do nothing but trouble. This is like, I don't know, is it 20 minutes from Augusta or something? Right, so not that far. So this is how how small people's worlds are, you know, where they might have the same accent or the same look, the same and everything else, and have very identical culture and yet reject it. One thing that's great now, I think is great, is things being online. So when the press comes, the newspaper comes. Actually, this is a paper that it's only online because they don't have any money anymore to print their paper. So this paper in Farmington covered it, and then yeah. So I came to a point where again it felt really good for me to have somehow managed to confront the thing I had a problem with, right? Which I had a problem with not feeling I didn't belong. Like confronting it, doing something about it, being active, doing something, and then getting a response that was like approval, getting people saying it was meaningful. So this was an example of it, like just getting this Best Graffiti Artist prize. So what this means to me is one important thing, is that when I think cultures can be changed. So, for example, bullying. I'm going to ask a stupid question, okay? So who here knows what bullying means? Just two people. I know everybody knows what it means, right? And I'm sure you guys have all talked about it in school at some point. I think for people of my generation, I grew up in another country, so things are different, you know, school system, but for people of my generation in this country, or people a little bit older, I'm sure the word existed, but it wasn't something that was discussed in school, I don't think. So what happened? So this is something like where still today you have people who say, well, you're always going to have bullying, people just got to toughen up and you know, get used to it. So it's something that people thought were just a part of the culture. You just could not change this part of the culture. And yet, at some point, people, parents, school administrators, politicians decided, we're going to get rid of this. And we're going to do that by confronting it. We're going to do that by talking about it. And we're going to change that culture. I bet you that half these parents, these teachers, these politicians, or more than half, maybe not, probably everybody, because everybody gets bullied at some point or another. All of these people probably experience bullying. So what did they do? All right, so when somebody does something wrong to you, I think there's two basic choices, right? There's revenge, which is awesome for like Hollywood films and all this stuff. And I'm sure like some people find that kid who picked on them in 5th grade and kicked them in the shins or something. But there's something even more powerful, which is when you make sure that somebody else doesn't experience what you're going to experience. And I'm going to bet that from an emotional level, I'm an artist, so I see everything from emotions. I think like even policy, like the politics and all this is driven by emotions. So on an emotional level, the people who really want to talk about bullying, they wanted to have that feeling of knowing that somebody else didn't experience what they experienced. And so that's something that drives me. I also have a carpentry business. I used to have a really hard time getting jobs as a carpenter, even though I thought it was pretty good, because of my accent, because I was not from here. So every time that I hire somebody who doesn't really fit the description what you think of as a carpenter in Maine, that's something that helps me heal from my bad experiences of having felt rejected. Recently, actually we're going to get to this later. Let's get to it. So one last thing I want to say too is I would like to today to think about like how are people told that they don't belong? Okay, so that's what I focus on. Is like I focus on the fact that I confronted the fact that I felt like I didn't belong. I like to look at why other people are told they don't belong. So like in your school, in your family, even between siblings sometimes. Like how do we tell people that they don't belong? What's the real thing? Like it could be like gays, like who are you not, like you step into the school and there's people you just avoid all the time. It could be words, it could be racist words, it could be homophobic words, Islamophobic words. It could be physical violence, but it could also be a way of distinguishing, telling somebody they're not cool because of the way they're dressed. So that's something I'd like to think about. I'm going to stop talking for now, and if there's anybody, I think we have like 5 minutes left for this round, or we're past already.
We have a different schedule today, so let me check for you.
All right. So before we take a quick break, I just want to know if you guys have any questions or any comments.
Have you only drawn like grown-ups, like not any kids, just one?
Yes, so far I have. I wanted to do kids, but it's tricky because you have to ask the parents. And, but that, thanks for reminding me, because I definitely actually have kids that I need to draw.
We have about 10 minutes left before this clock is over, but it doesn't, these kids are here, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and one thing that portraiture is, like doing portraits is really hard. It's like the hardest thing you can do when you draw. So, when I started out, those people didn't look like what they were, drawings didn't look like the real people.
How about your shirt? Do you sell those? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I sell them on my website. And yeah, I like doing shirts because a lot of artists, they make paintings or they make a sculpture, and then because of the time involved and because of how few of them they sell, my friends who are selling, they're not like really famous artists or anything, but they sell their paintings, so it's like $3,000, $4,000. Like, and I just, so with I like t-shirts because I can make a bunch of them, and I can, for $20 or so, almost anybody can get one, and yeah. And it's fun. It's fun to like sort of design clothing, and it's so when I see, like shortly after I did these, I was just walking on Congress Street and I saw this older woman jogging, and she was wearing one of their shirts. It just felt so good, And so, not too long ago in Portland, somebody did this mural, right? And so the Portland Press Herald newspaper called me that day. I was at work and I get a call, and they said, Portland Press Herald, what did I do now? And they asked me if I was the one who did this. And so I said no. I explained that I'm all about it. It's free speech and it's about politics. A lot of art in Maine is like landscapes, little lighthouses and stuff. So anybody who talks about things that are real, that matter to people, I'm down with it. But I was like, this is not me. And then, so I went back to work. This is me hammering at work. And then I get a second call, and it was Portland, Phoenix, and they were like, "Hi, Pigeon. We want to know if you have done this, you did this mural. If you know anybody who did." And at that point, I was like, "No." And you know why I didn't? Because it's exactly the opposite of what I do. right? So if you look at those posters, first of all, I take time knowing somebody. I draw people that I like, and then it's even more challenging because then you go to draw them and you know them, and then they're like, I don't like that portrait you did of me, and you go and you know it's a lot of responsibility because it's your face. People, you know, you don't mess with somebody's face. So, and then Mainers is just a word that says where you live, but it's a word of belonging. So for me, it's a positive word. So in a way, it's exactly the opposite of this, because I draw people I like. I try to portray what I like about them, and I say something positive about them. And that's what I'd like to do with you guys today. Okay, I'd like to work on some portraits, right? Just not think about that. Just look at that and try to like see the shape of her face and just.
Oh yeah. This is mine. I'm in the process.
I left Sherry's Sharpies here because some kids are using them, so
Yeah.
I figured that would be fun.